Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Researcher Celebrity. Today we have Dr. Anusha Krishnan with us. A brief about Dr. Anusha. She has done her bachelor's in biomedical sciences from Delhi University and then pursued the integrated course for master's and PhD in ecology from Indian Institute of Sciences. She has worked a long journey which we'll be discussing and currently is an associate manager in corporate medico-marketing. With this brief introduction, I would like to welcome Dr. Anusha by saying thank you very much for taking time out, and we look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Raja. This is a lovely opportunity, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
So we always start this conversation with our celebrities that how and when you decided that you want to pursue like we always say researcher, but for you I'll say that when you decided that you really want to do a PhD.
I think that was towards the end of my first year of BSc. So I had a set of very, very good teachers during my BSc, my bachelor's. And I believe all four of my teachers, of the four teachers that I had, three of them were still pursuing their own PhDs. And one lady had just finished her PhD. So the way they spoke about their path in academia and their path in science was something that really, it energized me, the way they spoke about their work and about their experiences. And it was something that I felt I could also do. So I think it was my teachers who ultimately pushed me into getting into science. They were also very supportive of taking up a path in research and in academia. And so I think that was what started me off on my journey towards a PhD.
So this is one of the rarest moment where the teachers who themselves are PhD students are motivating the next generation of researchers. So now let's
Yes.
talk about when you chose that. Obviously IISc in India everyone knows, and even in abroad people know about Indian Institute of Sciences. So when instead of doing just straightways masters and then PhD, which is a conventional path, you were like, okay, let's take the integrated path, which is also very important, and also if you are getting it at IISc, it is temptive also. So when you
Right.
joined IISc, what was the information you had about IISc before, and then how it changed over the period of time by the end of your course?
Right. Okay. So I believe I made the choice of IISc because there were only, I think, 3 or 4 institutes at that time that offered an integrated PhD course, and I was very sure that I wanted to do that.
Mhm.
So I believe it was NCBS, that's the National Center for Biological Sciences, TIFR, that's the Tata Institute for Fundamental Research, and IISc that offered this course. So I did a lot of background research on the integrated PhD course, and for that, I think I had a lot of support from my batchmates, from my classmates. And along with that, what actually helped was in my towards the end of my first year of PhD, I came to know about the KVPY program. This was the Kishore Vaigyanik Protsahan Yojana program, which I believe now has been stopped, which is a very sad thing. And it was through the KVPY program that I got to know about IISc and about the courses at IISc. At that time, when during my BSc, not many people knew about an integrated PhD course. So it was through KVPY that I got to know about these institutions and these institutes. And it was through KVPY that I got to know there was an integrated PhD program. And me and my classmates did quite a bit of digging into that. And I believe almost the whole of my batch attempted the exams. We went to the same center. We all gave the exam together. And I believe some 4 or 5 of us got through to the interview stage. After which, there were 4 of us who did get into each of these different institutions. So it was, I would say, a group effort. Our teachers helped a lot during our BSc, and of course, our the group of people that I was with during my BSc. We did it like almost like a team project. So that's how I got to know about the course, and that's how we got into it also.
So before we start talking about the PhD and the process and the journey, I would like to ask that, as you mentioned, that you were motivated by your teachers who were still doing PhD by themselves. So, based on your experience, their experiences about the struggle of the PhD, the challenges, you were still the brave heart. And as you said, the entire batch of yours were like, okay, let's do the integrated PhD, do all the background research. Even before becoming the researcher, you have done your background research, how to do research. So, how was that when have you ever seen them stressed, your teachers, because they were maintaining the position like they're teaching and still being the PhD student?
Yes, of course, we did see that, but somehow I think, we would hear about how they had to spend late nights in the lab, and sometimes in between, while they would teach us during the morning session, and then they'd rush to their labs to finish up experiments during the afternoon and the evenings. We did see that to some extent, but somehow I think only the excitement got through, not the difficult parts of it. So I think that motivated us even further, and it sounded more like an adventure. So
Mm-hmm.
we were like, oh, you get to do something in the morning, and then you get to the lab, and you get to do something that really motivates and inspires you. So I think seeing that in our teachers helped all of us make up our minds that we wanted to get into research, and that we wanted to pursue academia. So I think, despite the fact that we did see our teachers struggle in certain ways, despite us having had conversations with them and they telling us that it was a difficult journey, they always put it forward as a difficult but rewarding journey. So I think that again motivated all of us to go in for this.
So now, with like all this motivation, enthusiasm, all the background work, you made it to IASC. Now let's start with the journey. How it start, like from the start date and the end, the two things which, one thing which never changed, one thing which completely changed. Hello?
Okay. One thing that never changed, that is a very difficult thing to say, because I believe from the time that I stepped into ISC till the time that I left ISC, a lot's changed.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I don't think changed is my love for science,
Nice.
and my love for engaging with science. That has never changed.
Mm-hmm.
What has perhaps changed a lot is my outlook in terms of so many things, actually. So ISC is the place where I grew up. So I had to stay by myself, and I stayed in the hostel. I worked by myself a lot of the times. Although you have a lab environment, ultimately a PhD is very much a lonesome undertaking, because it's your project, it's your undertaking, and overall the PhD itself is your work. So I mean, from the time that I joined to the time that I left, of course, I grew up a lot. I understood how difficult it is to do science. I understood the amount of, I've seen quite a lot of people drop out. And I think the one thing that I came away with when I left ISC is losing my judgmental, outlook. When I joined, I was like, PhD is the best thing that one can do. But once I finished my PhD and I had seen so many other people take different paths, it made me set aside that judgmental outlook. And I thought, and I understood that a PhD, finishing your PhD or continuing in academia after your PhD is not always the best way for people to go forward. There are many, many other options that can be taken either halfway through a PhD, or once you finish your PhD, you think you're not, comfortable with research. There are just so many other options out there. So, PhD is not the end of everything. In fact, I remember my PhD guide telling me that now that you've finished your PhD, this is just the beginning.
Yes.
And when she said that, for a minute, I felt really downhearted. Then I realized that that's not what she meant. She didn't mean it that way. She said there's just so many opportunities out there. It's just a beginning. So
Absolutely. So now, in correlation with this, I would like to ask that you have seen people taking different paths. You changed it after your period, like your PhD. How can you tell, or what you can tell to all the audience here, that whatever you are doing today, how PhD has helped you in what you are today?
okay. So a PhD is unlike, I don't know, other jobs. A PhD will give you an all-rounded, if you choose to work with it that way, it can give you a mix of both technical skills as well as soft skills. Because again, when you are doing your PhD, you are not just the worker for that project, you are the person who does the data generation. You are also the person who will analyze the data. So you not just become the person who gathers the data, you're also the data analyst. And beyond that, you're also the person who handles the people in a lab or around you to get the work done. So you also become, you have to develop people skills. Apart from all of that, you also have to learn to speak well and to communicate. So I think every one of the skills that I have currently, that I use in my job currently, stem from my experiences in my PhD. Because again, like I said, PhD is when I grew up. Those I spent 6 years doing my PhD and 3 years before that doing my MS. And those 9 years were very, very important for my life because I learned so many different skills and so many different skill sets that I developed, which I still use till this day. So a PhD will teach you all of these things as long as you realize that you're, learning all of these skills.
Absolutely. And like one of our like my PhD supervisor, Dr. Tiyadaki, always said that PhD trains you for the rest of your life. It changes
Very much.
not your name, but your
Very much.
personality also. And
Yes.
as you mentioned about the maturity, that how when you enrolled and when you got out of the ISC, the non-judgmental part, that is very important. And also about gathering the technical and soft skills, which can take you wherever you want to go, because now when you have them, you have them. So I would like to take a moment to ask that being mature, when now people talk about women in STEM, like there are many female researchers who step outside their home for the first time, so they face so many different kind of challenges. So apart from the research, what were the challenges which you faced when you were doing your PhD, and then now after so many things, the different paths taken, now you see that the things are changing in India?
Mhm. Right. So, personally, I have not really faced a lot of the challenges that other women researchers face. I don't know. I probably was very lucky in that respect, but I never had I never had too many issues to deal with.
Mhm.
So I never felt, nobody distinguished between male and female researchers in the lab where I worked. So we never had that kind of an issue. But just because I have never had such an experience, I can't say that a lot of my peers didn't have this kind of uh, experiences. So I have seen several of my peers undergo a lot of judgment just because they were women. They were deemed, unfit for research because they were women. And I also saw that it had a very, a bad effect on their personal lives because a lot of um, a lot of the scientists in ISC used to have this outlook that if a female researcher decides to get married, they're very likely to not continue with their PhDs. So there would be situations where either the researchers would be asked to leave the lab, or they weren't even given a chance in the lab. Those kind of things I have seen. Personally, I've never experienced them, but I have seen other people experience them. So now I think there has been quite a bit of a change. For one thing, it is no longer politically correct for you to even voice such opinions, which in itself is good because, when I first joined, such things were talked about quite openly. But now it's a taboo subject in the sense that, if somebody hears you talking about differentiating between a male and a female researcher that way, they'll come down very heavily on you, especially with social media and other things.
Mhm.
Um, Underlying all of that, I'm not sure if that has changed much, but I have seen that the newer crop of researchers are a lot more open to discussing flexibility between work-life balance and other things, which actually opens up more opportunity for women researchers and women in STEM. So I do see that there is quite a lot of
Seems like there is a technical glitch with, and this is one of the things which we always say, that technology is can take us up to somewhere, and from there we have to move on our own. So now I would like to wrap this thing. The conversation till now, what has happened is about you have to have a clear mind.
And I'm hoping that this change will clear the issues.
You have to have a clear mind before committing to PhD, and then the background research. Yeah, so now Dr. Anusha is back. I think there was some technical glitch where it happened. So yeah, you
Sorry
were
about
mentioning.
that.
Yeah, sure. Now we can hear you fine.
Okay. So did you lose me in between?
Yes.
Could you let me know where you lost me? I
So
can
we
just repeat.
can continue from like how the things has changed over the part. You were saying that how now it is a taboo that people don't say in front, but things probably are still, somewhere underlying in there.
That may be the case, but I do see a lot of change in terms of women getting more support to pursue PhDs and to move up the academic ladder. That is one very important thing. Women get a lot more support from families, from even the institutions themselves.
Yes.
They have, they are making progress in setting up, places where women can leave kids, where there are creches, where women researchers can leave their kids during the day when they're working. A lot of other supportive measures have been coming up, which I think is helping with women move up the academic ladder. In my time, what happened was there would be a lot of women in the PhD positions, but beyond that, professor, associate professor, and the senior positions, there were very few women.
Yes.
But that I believe is changing quite a bit.
Yeah. No, this is very important change, not only in terms of the efforts which are done by government, but also, as you said, setting up the infrastructure to support them as in work-life balance, so that now you can actually come with your newborn and you don't have to worry about them, that what is happening with them at home. Now you have people to take care of them, and then you go. So these are the things which I believe needs to be discussed more, because institutions like ISC, NCBS, TIFR, these are the elite institutions, and they are, the torchbearer of Indian research in so many terms. And this is one aspect of it. Like, you are supposed to ensure the wellness of your researcher, be it male or female, when it comes. So, what are the things which you see that still needs to be worked upon to support women researchers?
I Okay, so like you said, there is still that underlying stigma of being a woman that's still not completely gone. So that is definitely something that needs to be worked on. But there again, it's a work in progress. So I think it is getting better, which is great. Apart from that, like you said, the infrastructure for supporting women, especially in terms of creches and other places, is still not completely in place. IASC, I do not know if it contains a creche even now. When I joined, it didn't. NCBS and TIFR were the only two institutions which did. But I believe now that places like the ICERs, they have very good creches within the campuses, and those are very, very good in terms of supporting women who are, working at the institution. Apart from that, I don't know what else that can be done. It's like, the answers are there. It's just that those answers need to be strengthened, and those systems need to be strengthened until they're able to support all the women who want to be within academia. So
Absolutely.
that's about all I can say right now.
So now
We're on
we
the right.
Yes, absolutely. So I would like to know your, because you have taken this path, like where you decided that you don't want to pursue in academia, and you moved now, like for communication purposes, we say that alternate career. Because if you are done PhD, then you are supposed to do, some of the traditional path, either it is in industry or in academia. So when you decided that you want to pursue in research communications, so what you can tell our researchers who are in dilemma, either in their PhD or in their postdoc research, when they are kind of done with the research and they still are not ready to give up on research, what are the things they should consider before taking their next move?
There are so many things to take into consideration. So in my personal journey, what happened was family played a very important role. I was not, I had two very young children by the time I finished my PhD. So going in for an academic path, a career was not very was not really an option that I was considering, because that would have required me to go in for a postdoc, and usually a postdoc would require me to go abroad, and that was not a very great option at the time that I was there. So one thing is, you need to think about what your next step is in terms of, if you need to scale the academic ladder, where do you have to be? Are you all right staying where you are currently, or would you need to shift to a new place? And if you do that, what is the effect on your family? That was a very important point for me. Apart from that, you also need to think, and you need to have a very deep conversation with yourself about whether you're enjoying what you're doing, and whether you would like to shift out of it. But if you're going to shift out of it, how far away are you going to shift out of that particular pathway? So for me, the shift towards science communication came very naturally, because I love reading, I've always loved communicating, and shifting to science is still something that I love. It's just that the research part of it was something I thought was going to be very overwhelming, and I couldn't take it on at that point of time in my life. So I decided to set that aside, and I decided to take up something that came much more naturally to me, but without letting go of my roots in science. So some people can take that decision, whereas there are others who would prefer to completely leave science behind and move on to something else. That also is a great decision, but you also need to think about whether, at that stage, you are ready to start right at the bottom of a new journey and then work your way up, or would it be better for you to use science as a halfway step, shift sideways, and then keep moving up the ladder towards whatever goal it is that you want to move towards. So I would say that there are two very important things to take into consideration if you are considering moving out of your current career. One is your personal situation, and the second is, of course, whether whether your thought process in wanting to move out of science stems from whether you're very clear about the fact that you don't want to continue in the academic ladder. And if that's the case, then you need to give further thought onto how you're going to step away from that without losing whatever momentum you've gained in your career. So I think that's a very important thing to think about.
Absolutely. And now we'll say that, like, about you mentioned that PhD trains one for technical skills and soft skills. Still, in general audience, researchers are not seen as very good at communications. Most of them. There are researchers who can go at any level you give them, either starting from the elementary students to a farmer to the scientist or to anyone else. But still, most of the researchers still struggle it. And now, when you took up research communication as your forefront, what are the suggestions, guidance you can give to some of the researchers who still feel stuck in communicating their research?
Okay, so the first thing that I would say is try and figure out what your audience is. That's always the first step. So if your audience is other researchers, then you need to tailor your communication accordingly. If your communication is to an audience that is not researchers, then again, you have a very different type of communication strategy that you should use. So I would say the first step that you would think about if you think you're struggling with your communication, is try and figure out your audience. So for example, if you are struggling with communicating with other researchers, then you need to figure out why you're doing that. Is your scientific vocabulary not enough? If your English is not great, then you'll need to figure out some way of getting over that. So I think the primary point that all researchers should think about is audience. Once you figured out, what your audience is, it helps if you go out onto the internet and figure out what kind of science communication is being done for that particular audience. So, for example, let's say that your audience is other researchers, then obviously the kind of communication there is either through PowerPoint presentations or through posters or through papers, manuscripts. So there are plenty of courses that are available for you to learn the skills to do all of those. On the other hand, if you're talking about, let's say that you want to communicate with non-researchers, and for scientists that is also important. For example, if you need to convince a board of directors of a company that they should give you money, they should fund your research. Those people may not have a scientific background, but you need to be able to communicate that your research is important enough that they should be funding you. So in such situations, again, you would need to learn to communicate your research in a way that has very less scientific jargon, but in a way that also engages your audience. So again, for such situations, there are plenty of courses out there that will teach you how to do this. So my advice would be, first figure out your audience. Once you've figured out your audience, then you home in on the specific kind of communication that you want to do, science communication you want to do, and then use the internet to figure out what are the steps to do that, and what are the other tips and tricks that you can use to do that effectively. Apply those, and then you pretty much got your solution.
Absolutely. So now this brings us to our next topic about, like, when you have worked in academic situations and now in corporate world, you might have come across with researchers who are good in the concepts and probably performing the experiments and all that stuff, but they are not well equipped with English, because they say that research is not English, research is something else. And we had these conversations with some of our researchers, and some of our celebrities gave their thoughts on how to tackle this. Coming from a communication specialist, what you suggest them, how they should prepare themselves?
So can you give me an example of what is the situation that they might find themselves in?
Yeah, so let me say this. One of the researcher was well equipped with all the technical skills required to accomplish a research goal, but was unable to communicate the same to the peers, or let's say had problems writing the manuscripts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially, this is a problem with somebody who's having trouble with writing a manuscript. You're not talking about an issue where somebody is trying to present it to an audience, right? Because the two are very different situations.
No, so even so, okay, let's say both of the situations, because they say that they were not very comfortable presenting their work in international conferences, which happens with some of the students who are coming from rural background where English was not their first language, and then now
Right.
they have to go outside India and then present their work.
Okay. So in such situations, I would say that the first thing that the student would need to do is spend about 2 to 3 months on taking on an intensive English training course. So I know I've had personal experience with such a student. He was an exceptionally bright science student, but he had trouble with English because he came from a rural Marathi background. But he spent 3 months where he went and got uh, English lessons. Hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, am I back now? Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, this person that I knew put in a lot of effort over 2 to 3 months, and he would attend these English classes daily. until he came to a level where, sometimes the English words that he used, I had to go and look them up in a dictionary. And I'm a person who is more comfortable in English than in my own mother tongue. So it is very possible to go to overcome these issues with language, but it requires 2 to 3 months of intensive effort, not just with, written and reading English, but also with spoken English, for which there are classes available. And I would suggest that, every PhD student take those on at some point of time or the other, because it's all going to come in handy later on.
Absolutely.
So although these are skills that you should ideally have learned, let's say in your, school days, it's never too late for you to learn them even at the PhD stage.
And this is something which I always say to these researchers whenever we encounter one of those, that yes, English is just a language, but that is the only tool which you have to communicate your research when you are with a broader either you say broader audience within India or outside India. And that was one of the reasons why we are having these conversation in English, because within India, people are more like, if you say united all of them, then based on my experience, which I might be wrong, but English unites us more than anything else. And then also it makes it more global, because research is not what only we do in India. Either we are setting up records or someone else has set up. We In research, it's always about the teamwork. So this brings
Right.
us to the next question about communicating research with, now there are offices, dedicated offices in so many different institutes in India, where they have people for research communication, which helps you to teach and train, like for helping the students if they are not well equipped, and also to the PIs, where they have to go and pitch their projects to philanthropists. So what you can tell about, based on your experience, what you have experienced, and then how a PhD student, if they have this option, how they should leverage this and then build their soft skill set even more.
Right. Okay. So my experience in research communication offices has not been so much in training people as in writing up papers, published papers into pieces, shorter pieces, maybe about 500 to 700 word pieces as press releases. So I have not personally trained, either researchers or PhD students in communication. But what I have done in communication offices is to convert what they are saying in the scientific language into simpler language so that it reaches a broader audience. I've helped with PowerPoint presentations and other things. And the best way for such people to learn is simply to look at such popular science pieces and learn from there. There are some very basic rules that you can follow. One is that every time you write something, try to remove all the scientific jargon from it. If you cannot absolutely not remove the scientific jargon, always make sure that you explain what it is the first time you use it, and then continue to use it. So these are very basic things that most researchers, after they've read a couple of my pieces, they get the hang of it. And if they choose to use it in their own communication, great. A lot of them don't really bother, because they say, anyway, you're here to do it for us, you go ahead and do it. But I know that several other people have learned from those, and they do use it now quite frequently in the way when they communicate with people who are non-scientists.
So based on your, again, experience, when you are interacting within the research communication teams, the one thing which you think that people who are dedicated to research communication still struggles with?
I think actually I've been out of the research communication field as an office for quite some time. But some of the things that people will always struggle with, I think, is a lot of scientists don't believe that this kind of research communication is very important. So usually, when you have to go to them to get information for a piece, or when you have to talk to them to get something done, they put you on the lowest priority. So just getting a hold of somebody to talk to you, to let you know what it is that you have to work on for a piece, sometimes becomes a problem. And I see that even to this day. I have contacted with people who are still in research communication offices. And even now they tell me, it's like I have to literally chase a scientist for, 4 days before they're willing to commit some bit of time to talk to me to get this work done. So that is one. Sometimes scientists don't take the work very seriously, despite the fact that you tell them, this is important for your funding, etc., etc. But some people don't get it.
No.
So that's also in a way understandable, because for them science comes first. So that's understandable, but I think that's an age-old issue.
And I believe that in one of our researcher celebrity conversation, when we were talking to one of the directors, ex-directors, founders, and all those, they said that it is very important for the whole institution to understand that what is happening there. The administrative staff, the HR staff should be aware of, and ISC and TIFR, they does this open science day where people come from outside. But now these, some of the leading researchers in India and who happen to be director of the institute, because they have the power, they said that, okay, one day a lab should be open for administrative staff also, because there are things which they can never understand, that how you are going to use a popcorn cup for your research. There is no way you can connect these things. And they put, flags on that why you are ordering things which is not even happening, it cannot be used for your research. But when they come inside your lab, they see that, they experience it. Now they know that, okay, we have never thought that it can be used this way. And the same thing goes for research communication specialist, when they are saying that, okay, we are here to help you, but you also have to understand that you have to give us time and keep this on your priority list. Yeah, okay. So now keeping the time, I would like to ask the question that, based on all your cumulative experience of research within, either it is doing on bench, because ecology is like very heavy, deep in research oriented work, and then now in communications, what is the most challenging and what is the most fulfilling thing you have experienced?
In research or in research communication? Which one?
All together.
All of them, is it? Okay. They're all different things. In research, what was during my time at the bench, as you put it, what was most difficult? I don't know. I think I found the whole process of it very fulfilling, because everything was done by me. So I gathered the data, I sat and analyzed the data, I sat and wrote my papers. That whole process, of course, each of these different steps had their own challenges, but they were also very, very fulfilling at the end of the day. When I look at all the data that I collected, it's like several Excel sheets full of data, and each Excel sheet runs to roughly about 1,000 lines. And it's really makes you feel so, it makes you feel so proud about the fact that you collected all of that data over a span of time. So that was, of course, very challenging and very fulfilling. Then, of course, the time that I spent in learning statistical analysis to actually make sense of that data, that was also very challenging. But at the end of it, when you see the graph and you see, okay, this is what comes out of all the raw data that you have, that's also very fulfilling. And then, of course, when you see your paper in print and your name there as an author, that is, of course, extremely fulfilling. But I know that the writing of the paper was quite a struggle, because again, at that point of time, I had 2 small children to take care of. I think I've written my thesis and all of my papers probably between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m. in the morning. Everything was done during that time, because that was the only free time that I would have in between the analysis and the my motherly duties. So and then my research guide was a very, very she was the kind of person who expected perfection. So I know that each one of my paper drafts went through at least 10 revisions. So that was quite a bit of a struggle. So finally seeing it in print was, of course, a huge plus. Further to that, seeing those papers being cited is another level of fulfillment altogether. So yeah, all of those things were challenging in their own ways, in different ways, but they were very fulfilling. Same goes for my writing. It's not as long term as my PhD was, but I spend every time I have to write a piece, it takes me a little time to digest the information and then put it into words and then make sure that the words flow in the right way. So all of that is always a struggle, even to this day, after 10 years of experience writing science communication pieces, I still struggle sometimes with stories. So every piece is different, every story is different. I always struggle with every one of them. Very few of them have just rolled off easily, but the fulfillment comes in seeing them out there in print. And usually, the other form of fulfillment comes when it comes back from the editor with minimal changes. So that's another level of happiness altogether. So those are my challenges, and those are, ultimately just seeing these pieces out in print and people reading them is a very, very high form of fulfillment.
Yeah, absolutely. So what one word, if I have to ask, what keeps you going?
What keeps me going is my love for science and is my love for communication. It's not one word, but there it
Yes,
is.
absolutely. This is what we say always to all our audience, that if science gives you pleasure, if it is your passion, be 100% into it. And one thing which science ensures is it will take you where you want to go. The path might be different. You might have to change based on your experiences, and then again, interest also change over a period of time. So one thing which can research can guarantees it will take you wherever you want to go. The second thing which we say at Empowering Science Foundation to all our audience, that if you want to talk to our researcher celebrity, either you can write directly to them or you can write to Empowering Science Foundation. And then we also run mentor-mentee program where you can be. So now if Dr. Anusha, if somebody wants to get mentored by her, they can write to you directly or can write it to us, and then we can put you in touch with them so that you can come, contribute to their success.
Right. Both both work. So, you're free to share my email ID with people. And if you would like to write to me with anyone who needs help, I'm ready to help.
Thank you very much. With this, we'll say thank you very, very much, Dr. Anusha, for sharing the journey and igniting and also giving an option to young researchers. And to all the audience, we'll say keep enjoying your research and stay tuned for other episode of Researchers Celebrity. Thank you, Dr. Anusha.
Thank you. Bye bye.